Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. Our sleepy scholar Layla has arrived in the second half of Genshin Impact patch 3.2. In today's video, we'll be seeing how strong narcolepsy can be when used in combat. Layla is an interesting character, representing the sleepwalking community. Not only does she fall asleep to write her papers, but she also falls asleep to combat her foes. In this video, we'll be taking a look at two main builds for Layla, a pure shield support Layla, and a sub DPS cryo damage Layla. We're also going to have a bit of fun and push her shielding capabilities to its absolute limit. Anyway, let's start off with a free-to-play friendly shield support build. She has 40,947 hit points with this build, and she is using the Favonius Sword. For her artifacts, she's using the 4-piece Tenacity of the Millilith, focused on HP percent with crit rate substats. She is of course at Constellation 0 throughout this entire video, and her talents are only at 6, 8, and 6. Layla has quite a bit of room to grow in terms of her talents, and I'll talk more about that later. Anyway, let's start off as we always do by taking a look at her kit's performance against our most favorite of volunteers, the Pyro Regisvine. Her basic attacks, Sword of Radiant Path, are quite pretty as she destroys a diamond-like object every time she does her N3. Endless amounts of diamonds in her pocket aside, she is the second sword character in the game to only have a 3-hit normal attack string. Here her charged attacks are just like most other sword characters. Unfortunately, the amount of damage her diamond busting normals do with this pure HP support build is extraordinarily and unsurprisingly low. Let's instead take a look at a much more interesting part of her kit, her elemental skill, Knights of Formal Focus. Layla literally takes a nap as she shrouds herself inside a fairly robust cryo shield. This shield gains a star every 1.5-ish seconds, and once there are 4 stars, they automatically fire at a nearby enemy, doing a small amount of cryo damage. These stars are also enhanced by both her passives. The first passive improves her shield strength by 6% per star, the second passive increases each star's damage by 1.5% of her max HP as flat damage. As we can see, during the entire duration of her sleepy shield, if we just let Layla nap through it all, only 1 volley of stars was fired. However, when a teammate uses their elemental skill while Layla's shields are up, the shield gets 2 additional stars per elemental skill usage. While the stars are firing, stars cannot be gained, so using an elemental skill will not gain stars while these stars are shooting. As we can see here, now 3 volleys of stars were able to be fired thanks to Bennett spamming his elemental skill many times. Let's run through some stats for Layla's elemental skill. The initial cast does not generate any cryoparticles. This clip showed the particles from the Favonius Sword proccing on cast. Each wave of stars generates 1 to 2 cryoparticles, and each wave of stars applies cryo once. And usually I only get 2 waves of stars, but if I'm able to squeeze out a 4th elemental skill at the right time, I'm able to just barely squeeze out the 3rd wave of stars. We'll get into its damage absorption capabilities in a bit. Sadly, the damage that her shield stars do is comically low, ranging from 405 damage to a melt that critted for a universe collapsing 1246 damage. Up next is her elemental burst, Dream of the Star Stream Shaker. This Cryo Disco Ball does damage based on Layla's max HP. It shoots 8 stars total, and every other star appears to apply cryo. Sadly, with this shield support build, yet again the damage it does is extremely copium. We can see here that the Pyro Regisvine barely lost any of its health bar. Honestly, I can't even say my usual catchphrase of non-negligible damage because this is basically negligible damage. Let's combine her entire diamond-shattering kit to attempt to annihilate our friendliest of volunteers. she did something that resembles damage, although that's quite debatable. The definition of damage according to Google is physical harm caused to something in such a way as to impair its value, usefulness, or normal function. Unfortunately, the Pyroregicine may as well be at full health here, as pretty much any other DPS character will have to knock it down again to pragmatically finish it off, thus making it no different from a fully healthy Pyroregicine. So based on this definition, Layla effectively did no damage to the Regicine with her entire kit. Alright, so I think we can tell that a shield support Layla build isn't going to do any amount of meaningful damage. Let's see how robust her shield is instead. With my Layla's 40,947 hit points, the base absorption of her level 8 shield is 9,033 damage. However, if both the tenacity and her stars are up, then its damage absorption goes up to 13,912 damage. It's a large range, but this is still quite decent for a relatively low investment build like this one. As we can see, Layla is able to comfortably nap through most minor enemy attacks, but against particularly dangerous attacks like the Electrovine's giant explosion thing, her shield got punched through relatively easily. Overall, a decent shield that provides good tenacity uptime as well. So what are some situations that Layla's shield can excel in? Well, she's basically an alternative to Diona with less upfront cryo application and cryo particles, an overall better shield, and no healing. A team that can appreciate this is a double Hydra Hu Tao team, especially if you don't have Zhongli. Another good team to use Layla as a Diona substitute is for a cryo DPS character like Eula. Although Eula is a physical DPS character, but you guys get my point, Eula is cryo. Layla can provide a nice comfy shield for Eula to build stacks for her elemental burst. And just for fun, let's push her shield to its limits. We're giving her the Refinement 5, Key of Kajnisut, Geo-Resonance, 2-piece Retracing Bolide, and some delicious chili minced cornbread buns. Then we're going to buff her HP even further beyond with Yelan's Constellation 4, case to survive the ultimate of all attacks from the Tomb Guard of the Desert King itself, the algorithm of semi-and-transient matrix of Overseer Network, the shoot a gazillion lasers that can only hit you if you fall asleep attack. Wait, Layla is actually falling asleep here, and slept mostly just fine through one of the most damaging attacks in the game, only taking 6,000 damage after all of that. Assuming I did my math correctly here, Layla's shield can absorb around 37,653 damage with all these buffs, which is an incredibly impressive performance from a Constellation 0 4-star character. So now that we've seen that Layla doesn't indeed provide an acceptable shield, let's take a look at a more damage-focused build. Because Layla is mostly an HP % damage scaling character, the Harbinger of Dawn is one of the best weapon options that she has, providing a ton of crit, as long as you can keep her over 90% HP. She's using the 2-piece Blizzard Strayer plus 2-piece Tenacity of the Millilith to maximize her damage. Let's see how powerful her DPS build is. Well, her burst stars are critting for 4,218 damage each, and each of her shield stars are tickling for 1,561 damage on crit each. Unfortunately, her entire kit wasn't even able to do half of the Regicine's health. Do keep in mind that my Layla's talents are not optimally leveled yet, but let's say her burst is at level 9 instead. This would increase her burst damage by 21%, and her burst stars would do 5,118 damage each, which is, well, I guess now all of this can be considered non-negligible damage. If we do decide to amplify her damage with something like Shenhe though, Mona and Kazuha, well, now Layla is actually doing some good damage. But let's be real here, literally any cryo character, including Diona and Aloy, would do roughly the same amount of damage here, as all they're really doing is being a Shenhe dispenser, since this is mostly a Shenhe Quill DPS team and not exactly a Layla DPS team. It's worth noting that Layla's shields here, with this build, is significantly weaker. So now it's time for my unfiltered opinion on Layla. From a design perspective, I think she's great. I love literally napping through enemy attacks, as it's not only pretty practical given Layla's shield thickness, but it's incredibly entertaining as well. But now let's talk about Layla's gameplay potential. Honestly, she's very similar to Diona. The main differences between her and Diona is that Layla's shield is significantly stronger, and she doesn't need a sacrificial weapon to have nearly 100% uptime. From a particle generation perspective though, I'd have to give it to Diona, as having a huge burst of cryo particles when you need it on demand with a double hold E with Diona is much more valuable in my opinion than the inconsistent amount of particles due to the variability in the number of star waves, as well as Layla's stars not generating if her shield is broken. And of course Diona provides healing, which Layla does not. In terms of Layla's damage, well, she does a bit more damage I think than Diona does if they're both built for maximum shielding, but I'm gonna be real with you guys, I don't think Layla's damage at Constellation 0 should even really be a consideration. What sets Layla apart is that her shield is overall the second best shield after the Archon of Shields himself, Zhongli, having nearly 100% uptime on her shield, great scaling, and being tied to her elemental skill and not to her elemental burst. So if you're looking for a thick shield and don't mind the bit of cryo application that Layla provides, and you don't have Zhongli, or I guess if you want a shield on each team, then Layla is actually a really good choice. Now, there is likely going to be some niche scenarios where her unique cryo application can do things that other cryo characters can't. And also Layla's personal damage and shield both improve significantly with her constellations. But since this is a first impressions video on her Constellation 0 capabilities, those topics are better left for another day. Let me know what you think about her favorite sleepy scholar down in the comments below. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Win to Lose, signing out.